Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. Another, I'm losing my voice and I haven't even started. Another live Q&A. Hope everyone's doing well. As always, if I can get a thumbs up, I'd appreciate it just to let me know that everything is working. I've already seen a lot of the questions in the chat. I'll get to those briefly. I have been, well, first of all, I hope everyone's doing well. Has it been 3 weeks? I can't remember. Was it 2 weeks? It seems like forever since I've done a live show. Anyway, I have been doing a deep dive into Medicare. And this will sound geeky, but I've really enjoyed it. It kind of reminds me of my days at the Public Company Accounting Oversight Board. I was in the Enforcement Division learning auditing standards, which I had no previous experience with. And it was just, it's almost like a fun puzzle to try to figure out. And I view Medicare, I see the thumbs up, thank you. I kind of view Medicare as the same way. I'm not going to talk a lot about it tonight in terms of my little opening thing here. There's something I think people need to know about this October 1st that we'll talk about. But of course, I've already seen some questions about Medicare, and I'll talk about that, or I'll address them. So I am going to have, the plan is to release 2 videos at the same time on Wednesday. One is discussing the difference between what's called original Medicare and Medicare Advantage. And actually, while I'm doing this, let me start a quick poll. I'll call it, are you on Medicare? And the answer will be yes, original Medicare, if, yes, Medicare Advantage, no, but will be in the next year, and then just no. So anyway, so I'm going to have one on the difference between what's called original Medicare and Medicare Advantage. And so that's, and then I'm going to have another one. I'm going to release them at the same time, kind of like part 1, part 2. I could have done it as one video, but discussing how to get help, And I'm doing, in some ways, the reason I'm doing it as 2 videos is I don't believe you can get the help you need in the way you need it unless you have a basic understanding on how Medicare works. If you don't have a basic understanding, then you're like me when I take my car in for service and they say it needs a flux capacitor. I'm like, well, of course it does. Oh, $1,800, okay, because I don't know how cars work. I wonder, surely you got that reference. Anyway, doesn't matter. With Medicare, there's plenty, none of us are going to know. You dig into the weeds and it gets really complicated. But the basics are not hard to grasp. And so in order to get help, whether you get help in the form of researching it on your own, and part of that second video will be resources for you. Here are a lot of good resources, some from the government, some from Kaiser Family Foundation, which is an excellent resource. So some of it will just be resources. Some of it will be I'll call it nonprofits you can go to because they don't have a financial interest in the outcome. By the way, there are pros and cons to all of this, including nonprofits. And then companies that are, insurance brokers, whether they're individual brokers in your neighborhood or where you live, nationwide brokers. I've partnered with Chapter, but it's really not even about Chapter. And I've done a lot of due diligence on Chapter, but if you end up using Chapter, whether you go through my affiliate phone number, which you'll find below this video, or not, please let me know about your experience. This is the one thing I've partnered with. And by the way, I've met them in person. I've grilled them. But it's the one thing that I've partnered with that I've not ever used because I'm not 65. So, but I'm cautiously optimistic that they do a reasonably good job. If I find out otherwise, they'll be gone. It's that simple. Now, so I'm going to have those 2 videos on Wednesday. And then on Friday, Ari Parker, who is with Chapter, and he wrote this book, It's Not Complicated. And it's not that complicated. Trust me, it's complicated. But I guess it's not that complicated. And this is the 2004 edition. It's not very long, 80 pages, but man, is it dense. Like, here's the flow chart. I don't know if you can, if my camera will zoom in on that. If I put it here, there we go. On whether you should get Medicare when you turn 65. All right. There's a 2025 version, free. It's PDF. I've linked to it below this video, below tonight's video. By the way, I always like to be transparent with you about how I make money. If you get the PDF, there's a phone number you can call. That's my phone number. I mean, not mine in the sense that I'll answer, but if you use that number to call Chapter, they know you got the number from me. And I could make money. I can get a fee if you sign up. Why do I tell you that? Because you absolutely need to understand how any company you interact with is making money. And that's a big issue in the Medicare space. And this, by the way, trust me, this relates to the October 1st date. Here's the issue. As you would expect, insurance brokers make money when they sell you insurance. That's normal, right? We would all expect that. Well, I get my car insurance, my broker makes a fee, and that's how they stay in business. But you need to know how they're making that fee and what their incentives are, right? One of the big issues in the Medicare space is that, generally speaking, I'm sure there are exceptions to everything, but generally speaking, a broker, and this is true of any broker, not just the big ones, not just the nationwide brokers, make more if they sell you a Medicare Advantage plan than if they sell you either a Medigap and or Plan D, which is for drugs, or excuse me, Part D for prescription drugs. And again, I'll get into this in the video on Wednesday, but Medigap and Part D tend to go with original Medicare, right? If you get an Advantage plan, most of them typically have drug coverage, and you're not going to get a Medigap plan with an Advantage plan. It doesn't work that way. So they can sell you the Advantage plan. That's one option. Or if you go with original Medicare, they can sell you a Medigap and or Part D drug plan. Well, they make about twice as much, roughly, on the Advantage plan in the first year as they do with Medigap and or prescription drugs. Now, starting in year 2, that changes. In fact, because they get commissions, if you stay on the plan for whatever, 10 years, 20 years, your lifetime, they get a commission each year. The commission for the Advantage plan drops like by half in year 2. So it sort of normalizes. And in fact, at least what I've been told, the commissions for a Medigap plan can sort of slowly go up for them. By the way, this doesn't change your cost at all. In fact, by law, insurance companies can't charge you more because you buy through a broker. So the commissions aren't directly affecting you. What they're affecting is the incentives that brokers have. And so on Friday, when we interview Ari, most of that's going to be Medicare questions. And you guys have been emailing me great questions. I've got a whole list. But at the end, I'm going to grill them about Chapter. How do you pay your insurance agents, your brokers? Do they have incentives for pushing people to Advantage plans? How do you police them? What about compliance? Now, I already have answers to those questions directly from Chapter, but we're going to grill them some more. And again, I'm getting to October 1st, but there's a federal lawsuit involving a number of insurers and brokers, not Chapter. And the allegation is that they were getting kickbacks from the insurance companies to promote Medicare Advantage plans. Now, that's a complaint. That's an allegation. We don't know if it's true or not. But the gist of it is this. Under federal law, the federal law caps how much an insurance company can pay a broker for different types of, I'll call it Medicare-related insurance, like Advantage plans and Medigap. It's capped by federal law. But they can also pay other sort of administrative costs to these brokers. And if I understand the complaint, I skimmed it. It's a lengthy complaint. It's fun though. Reminds me of the olden days when I practiced law. The idea behind this lawsuit, among other things, is that the insurance companies were paying these brokers more than they should have under the caps, but calling it, oh, this is an administrative fee, wink, wink, when really they were paying them to get more clients. And of course, the defendants, I shouldn't say of course, but they filed what's called a motion to dismiss. And they're saying, look, what you're alleging is explicitly permitted by law. Yep. All right. I don't know how that lawsuit's going to turn out, but you can tell this is big business. And so the best way you can protect yourself if you want help, is to understand the basics of how Medicare works. So if someone's putting you in an Advantage plan, even though you can afford an original Medicare plus a Medigap plan, and say with Part D prescription drugs, which in my view, is sort of the Cadillac insurance plan. That's the top of the heap. That's the best. Probably I would say specifically for Medigap, Plan G. I'll go into all of this, but that doesn't mean it's the best for you. There are actually some good reasons why you might want an Advantage plan, even if you can afford Original Medicare. I think there are good reasons. But if a broker is pushing you into an Advantage plan, you ought to be asking some questions. Wait a minute, I can afford Original Medicare. Why is this better? And, ask some questions. So, all right. So what's so special about October 1st? Well, as many of you might know, if you're on Medicare, you know this for sure, is that there is an open enrollment period every year, some annual enrollment period, open enrollment period that runs from October 15th to December 7th. And it's during this time you can change your insurance. Now, there are limits, but you can change from one Advantage plan to another, from Advantage to Original Medicare, from Original Medicare to Advantage. You can change your Medigap policies, although there are some situations where you can't as a practical matter. In any event, it is where the insurance companies, it's this time of year that the insurance companies and brokers do the vast majority of their business, October 15th to December 7th. And you say, that's great, Rob, appreciate it. I already knew that. So what's up with October 1? Starting October 1, they're allowed to market that. They're allowed to say, hey, call us up. We can help you with your 2026 plans. We can switch you, whatever. Before October 1st, there are limits on what they can advertise. Again, all governed by federal law. And so what's that mean? It means on October 1, you're going to see, particularly, if you're of Medicare age, you're going to get overwhelmed with ads. So you go online, you're going to see ads. You may get, I don't know if you get phone calls, shouldn't, but that's when, Joe Namath starts popping up for ads for Medicare. And the vast majority of the ads are for what? Medicare Advantage. And so I want to just let you know, there's nothing wrong with advertising as long as it's, accurate and, correct, not misleading, but it's coming, which is one of the reasons I'm doing some Medicare content this week, doing the interview on Friday, because I know October 1's coming and you're going to get blitzed. If you're on YouTube, maybe watching some of my videos, you might see a Medicare ad. I don't know. This is the first year I'm really super focused on Medicare. And so, yeah, that's the deal. You're going to see the ad blitz starting October 1st. And you should know it's coming and you should prepare yourself. By the way, it's amazing to me how, you think about politically charged issues. Trust me, we all know we've got too many of those. But you get into conversations online, and which I don't in this kind. I read them. People are serious about Medicare. There's the people that think Medicare Advantage is absolutely no use to anyone, and it's just like, I just don't react that way to these issues. I think about them more. Okay, here's what this offers. Here's what that offers. Here are the pros and cons. What makes the most sense for me? I don't know. I don't get exercised about it. And yet online, it's crazy. All right, so that's it. That's my spiel. What are we doing here? What do we got? 26% of you are already on Original Medicare, 14% on Medicare Advantage, which I misspelled, and 10% will be in the next year. So that's 50% or no. So interesting. So, by the way, there are times when Medicare Advantage makes sense. One of it's a cost issue, what you can afford. Original Medicare is more expensive, but there are other reasons. You might have had a Kaiser HMO plan during your career and have your doctors and love it. Well, you're probably going to need an Advantage plan if you want to stick with a Kaiser HMO. But that's for Wednesday's video. All right, enough of that. I'm in a good mood because right before the live show, I crushed an opponent in speed chess in like 16 moves. I mean, it wasn't even a fair fight. All right. What do we have? So folks have been, so this is another issue. What's the Shrunken Head Films? I've been helping my elderly mom with Medicare for a number of years now, looking forward to the discussion. That's part of the issue too. You may not be at Medicare age, but maybe your parents are, or someone that you're trying to help. So It's funny when like my mom went on Medicare. I don't even remember a phone call. I don't think not. She didn't need me. I don't know. I don't know how she decided. I had to find out. I don't even know what kind of Medicare she has. I assume it's original Medicare, but I don't actually know. Probably one of the worst pieces of advice you could conceivably get in the context of Medicare is that someone would recommend to you a Medicare Advantage plan while you have TRICARE for life. That has to be up there as like possibly the worst advice. Why? Well, I've never had TRICARE. I didn't serve in the military, but TRICARE for life is basically your Medigap and your prescription D or Part D prescription plan, all rolled into one that you already have. There could be times when you need to make sure the prescriptions you're taking are covered. But anyway. All right, let's get to a question. Lee says, what happened with that pre-75 RMA worksheet you were working on? Did I miss it? I don't even remember that. I must really be getting old. Was it RMD and I was working on a calculator, which I did develop in Claude. I never published it. I don't know if that's what you mean. Required, the D is two keys to the right of the A. So I'm just trying to, I don't know, maybe that was, I'm not sure. RMA, that's my guess. I need to work on it. I could get that done quickly, I think. Anyway, all right. So this is a really important question from John, and this is something we'll cover on Friday. But here's his question. I plan to be working at 65 and covered by my workplace insurance. My wife is covered by that as well, I assume his policy. Do I need to sign up at 65? So I mentioned this right here. So I would recommend that you download the PDF that's linked below this. This is the 2000, again, this is the 24 edition. I don't think, by the way, to my knowledge, these rules haven't changed. Other things have changed, but one of the issues, so it gives you this little, it's actually not as complicated as I'm kind of talking about it. Are you turning 65 soon? Well, I'll say yes. After you turn 65, will you get health insurance from an employer or a spouse's employer? Yes, but it goes on. With over 20 employees, and you say to yourself, like I did, who cares? What difference does that? How could it possibly matter? What kind of stupid system would actually believe that that is relevant to this question at all? Well, we can thank the lawyers in Washington because it matters. Do you work for a big employer or a small one? And that's how they define it. The over 20 employees. And the answer to whether you should sign up and exactly how it works, in part, depends on your answer to that question. Also, big issue, are you contributing to a health savings account? And if you are, when do you have to stop? I believe I want to say it's in here. Actually, it's in here somewhere. I think it's like 7 months before you apply, but that could be wrong. When do I need to stop contributing to my HSA for Medicare? Yeah, see, this I don't think is quite right. I got an LLM answer. In any event, that wasn't your question. I had this the other day. See, it is complicated. It's in the book. But in any event, yes or no, and then there's more questions. If it's yes, are you still contributing to an HSA? Yes. Once you sign up for Part A, you can no longer contribute to your HSA. Assess the quality of your employer insurance to decide whether to start Part A. That's what the book says. No, enroll in Medicare Part A and assess the quality of your employer insurance to decide whether to start Plan B. So it's complicated. There's moving parts, and that was all for a small employer. But if you get it wrong, it can really mess you up, and that's some of the questions I'll be asking on Friday. And you can get the PDF below this video and look at it yourself. Jonathan mentions that the projected Medicare premium next year is $206. That's for Part B. Part A, for most people, there's no cost. You've paid for it through your payroll taxes if you worked 10 years. Or a spouse. So, but yeah, for Part B, I've read the same thing. That's the projected, assuming IRMAA doesn't apply to you. And it's, yeah, so. So Lisa says she's already received notification that her Part D prescription plan is being discontinued and replaced by a more expensive plan. Premium increase $50 a month. So in my research, I've noticed this trend that costs are going up significantly. You can switch Part D plans during the open enrollment period, and there shouldn't be an issue from a. So if you go from like an Advantage plan to a original Medicare, and you want to buy a Medigap policy, depending on the circumstances, depending on where you live, because state law governs this too, you may either not qualify because of your health conditions, or the premiums could be very, very high. It just depends, and in some cases you can qualify without going through any sort of what they call underwriting, checking if you're healthy or not. But with Part D, assuming you have drug coverage now, and this Lisa does, has a Part D plan, she should be able to switch. Of course, you need to do that thoughtfully, right? I mean, cost is an issue, of course, but you also want to make sure that the plan you're switching to covers the drugs that you're taking. And there are online sources to help you with that, including Medicare.gov. You can actually put in your prescriptions, and here, I'll show it to you. Medicare Part D. Let's see here. Let me do it this. Let's go. See if I can find it. Okay. So here it is. So if you put in a zip code, I don't know, I'm just going to make up, I don't know, is that a zip code? And then let me make this a little bigger because it's probably hard to see. But this is in, by the way, medicare.gov/plan-compare. And you can look up Part C, which is Medicare Advantage. You can look up a drug plan, Part D, or you can look up a Medigap policy. And so we'll go with drug plans. And then some are covered by Medicaid, some have supplemental security income. There's different options here, but let's assume no. And do you want to see your drug costs when you compare plans? So we'll say yes, and you can list in your drugs. So we'll do, I don't know, is Lipitor expensive? I don't know. I'm fortunate enough that I don't really take any prescription drugs. I have a nasal spray, but that's probably too much information. Okay, so you can add this, and then it's gonna, add generic, keep brand. I don't know. We'll go with generic, and quantity, frequency, and the dosage, right? And we'll just leave it there. And I don't even remember what I put in here. 4.3 was it? I don't know. We'll do 5.5.6. That's got to be. Oh, you can put in your pharmacy name because some pharmacies are in network versus out. I don't even want to do this. This is to find a pharmacy. We won't do that. Well, I don't want to find a pharmacy. We'll just add that one. I see. Yeah, you have to. And there are your plans, and it shows you, your deductible. And you can, even if you're going to call Chapter or some other broker, or they're great local brokers, right? Just in your area. Whoops, let me put this over here. Smaller companies, but that know your area really well. So you want to check those out too. But you could ahead of time do your own research in this case to see what's available. Of course, I just put in goofy data and a zip code I didn't even know. I guess it's in North Carolina. Is that where I am? Oh no, I'm in Ohio, Defiance. Oh, I like it. So anyway, you can see, you get the details, and the cost can vary significantly. The star ratings are a system that Medicare adds to these plans, including you can do the same thing with Advantage, and I think Medigap as well. And you can sort this by star rating. Are there any 5 stars in Defiance? Let's find out. No, not a single 5-star. Come on, Ohio. There's not a single 4-star? What? All right. Well, there you go. So you get the idea. So you can, yeah. It's a pretty easy tool. What I've read is that the tool is not as good for Medigap policies, but I don't have any way to actually confirm whether that's true or not. So Scott says, I believe you recommend mutual funds in lieu of ETFs if the ETF is new. What Fidelity mutual fund would you use for total market? FBALX isn't even close to VBIAX by Vanguard. Well, so first of all, I did a video years ago now. It's hard to believe I've been doing this that long, where I said I do prefer mutual funds. I think that's still true today, but I think it's a toss-up. I like the fact that with mutual funds, you don't have to deal with the premium and the discount, but for the kind of funds we're talking about, it's negligible. You get a Vanguard fund or an index fund or Fidelity. I don't know if Fidelity does index ETFs, but in any event, iShares fund, they're so actively traded, the volume is so high that the premium or the discount, the spread, is just not going to be significant. That said, I happen to own mainly mutual funds, but if we go, but anyway, we can look at this. So let's look at FBALX. So FBALX, yeah, that's what I thought. It's a balanced fund. It's the Fidelity Balanced Fund, right? Well, I'll show you this to you in a second. Let me look up VBIAX. So I'm so used to the ETF tickers. So Vanguard is a balanced indexed fund too. See, here's what, let me, I'll show you these real quick. So here's the Fidelity Balanced Fund, which I've heard of. I've not studied it in depth. So I'd have to look at, how is this, let's see. So this is a combination of, what is this? These are all fixed income. So it's 60% stocks, 65% stocks, and 35% bonds, I guess, 36%, something like that. I guess really no cash. And if we go, let me take this comment down. If we go to VBIAX and look at the portfolio composition, it's roughly the same. And I don't know performance-wise, but these really probably wouldn't be the funds I would use. Whoops. How'd I do that? There we go. These wouldn't be the funds that I personally would use. Not that I'm not here to say there's anything particularly wrong with either of these funds, but I would go with straight up index funds that are either stocks or bonds for the most part. Certainly in a taxable account, I wouldn't use either of these funds. Let me pull it up on Morningstar. I'll show you this in just a second. Chart, comparing it to VBIAX. We're going to go to, let's see. So here we are. Now, what we have to map this out. So we'll go to max. And then we have to go to why didn't that change it? Let me get rid of that. I can't. Here we go. Why is that extended? So I want common. It didn't do what I thought it would do. Unless that is common, there's no way. No. It's like it got rid of my comparison. What is going on? Okay. Can I do max? I do max and it's still there in theory, but it is, how far does VBIX go? It's not there. Bless it. Okay. Well, there's a couple different ways to do this. It's probably user error, and I'll have to look into that. But what we can do instead, maybe, is go to performance So this one, the last 10 years from Vanguard is 923. And yeah, 1064. So the Fidelity funds obviously outperformed it pretty significantly. What we don't know is if the asset allocation has been the same, and that would take me too long to figure out. There's going to be a reason why. It's probably got less international or higher mix of growth, is my guess. Large growth. I'm just looking at the difference for 1 year. So 1 year, it's edged it out. But again, I feel like I'm rambling. I would just go with straight up index funds, like a total U.S. stock. If I wanted a bond fund, I'd get a bond fund separately so that I could put them in the different kinds of accounts that I want them in. So I don't know if that's answering your question. And yeah, I think I'm just gonna mercifully bring that answer to an end. All right. So someone mentions Dr. Ed. He does, I don't know him, but I know of his channel. And he does a live show every single day, I think, or every weekday. Man, that must be exhausting. All right. Let's see. Lone Star Tiger says, never understand why they make everything so complicated. I guess it creates jobs. One of the issues is that you have to have rules in place so that people can't simply wait until they're sick and then get insurance or get great insurance, right? Because if people do that, the whole pool of insured folks it's going to fail, right? So that's why if you go without prescription drug plan of some kind, there's different ways you can get it. It's not always Part D. For a certain period of time, you start to accrue some penalties so that if you ever then decide to buy into, say, a Part D plan, you're going to pay more because of the penalties, and you're going to pay more for life. Otherwise, people would would say, well, I don't need a prescription drug plan right now. I'm not taking any expensive drugs, and I'll just wait until I need them, and then I'll sign up, right? It's the same way with Medigap. You could say, well, Medicare Advantage is cheaper, so I'll just use that. I'm not, I'm healthy, and then if things, develop and I need really good insurance, I'll switch over to original Medicare and a Medigap policy. And get the Cadillac insurance, so to speak. Well, again, that's the problem. You can't really let people do that. Now, the rules are complicated for reasons certainly beyond that, but that's part of the complication. All right. Look, we should have confetti for Keith. I hit 100,000 in my TSP the other day. I've been contributing since 2018. Well done. I don't know, we can't all clap together. I wish we could. Okay. Let's see. Oh, so here, Lisa responded to my comment. She said, I believe that by reviewing many sources, I was able to get the basics, which is good and important. Okay. Maybe the most important question of the night, did OSU win over the weekend? No, they did not win because they didn't play. Yeah. All right. Let's see. What else? Norm says, I seriously don't see any advantage to Advantage plans. Well, for some, it's a cost issue because Medicare Advantage is cheaper than original Medicare plus a Medigap policy, let's say, plus Part D. And in fact, studies show that that you see that in the data in terms of who is signing up for Medicare Advantage plans. So that's one issue. And then, like I said, there are certain like HMO networks that people actually want to be a part of. and Kaiser is kind of one that comes to mind. We were actually part of their HMO, I think, for just a year. I don't know, 25 years ago, long time ago. And it was fine, but we didn't have, as I recall, we didn't have any significant medical issues. One of the issues with Advantage plans is prior authorization, where the insurance company in certain circumstances has to approve the treatment. You don't have that with original Medicare. And I think that's a very important consideration. Now, having said that, a lot of us live with prior authorization insurance during our working years. If you have an HMO or PPO, we have a PPO, and there's prior authorization, not for every single thing, and it often kicks in with expensive things. But we haven't had any issue with our PPO, even though we've had to go through that process. Now, for me personally, when I get to age 65, my wife does, I'm pretty confident we'll do original Medicare plus a Medigap policy. But we don't have that option now anywhere, right? I mean, the kind of coverage you can get from original Medicare and say a Plan G Medigap policy doesn't really exist in the wild, at least that I'm aware of. So that's not even an option for us, just out in the marketplace. Maybe it exists. I don't know. Okay. Advantage plans take the place of Medicare. Yes. So you technically still have Part A and Part B, and you have to pay the Part B premium. Often you'll see Medicare Advantage plans advertised as zero premium. That is, you're not paying the insurance company, and that's true. I think probably most of them don't have a premium, but you still have to pay the Part B premium. The difference is that under an Advantage plan, it's the insurance company that administers the benefits. Under original Medicare, Part A and Part B, there's no insurance company involved. It's the government. You use your Medicare card, right? And so, but yes, Medicare Advantage would replace original Medicare. It would replace a Medigap policy, and most Advantage plans typically have drug coverage. You want to confirm that and make sure it covers the drugs you need to take. But typically, Advantage plans also would take the place of a Part D prescription coverage. So yes, I mean, it does. You got to understand the intricacies. There are some Advantage plans that actually give you what's called a Part B give back, where you'll get some of your premium back, so that what they take out of your Social Security check won't be the full. I think it's $185 this year. You'll get some of it back. I would say, from what I've read, most Advantage plans don't do that, but some do. But of course, there's no free lunch. So if you find a plan that gives you a Part B give back, you're giving up something for that. They're not doing that out of the goodness of their heart. You'd have to figure out, well, what am I giving up? But with those caveats, and I'm sure more I'm not thinking about, yes, you have an Advantage plan, or you have original Medicare with possibly, it's not required, but a Medigap policy and or a Part D drug plan. Whew. Woods Parker wants me to ask this question. How many annoying Medicare Robo-Calls do you receive each day? 1 to 5, 6 to 10, 11, 15, more than 15? I'm going to guess now you shouldn't be getting any, but I don't know. I'm not 65. Maybe I'm just being hopeful. How do we end up? Let's see. 25 are on original Medicare, 12 are on Medicare Advantage, 11 will be on in the next year, 52 no. All right, I'll end that poll. All right, let's see here. So, did I lose it? Jonathan says there's nothing to the shenanigans once you are in the Advantage plan. I'm not exactly sure what that's in reference to, because I don't always follow the entire conversations, but one of those issues is this prior authorization, and you get a lot of things denied. The stats, I was just reading it today, before there were some changes made in the last year or so trying to reduce that issue. I think before that, it was about 6% were denied roughly because of prior authorization. But again, I don't have any experience with a Medicare Advantage plan. So, all right. Dave says, it might be helpful to explain how Advantage plans can be free. Most people don't know how that works. Yeah. And I'll probably talk more about that on Wednesday's video. But again, there's the Part B that you still have to pay, right? But you're on the hook for a lot of costs that you wouldn't be on the hook for under original Medicare with a Medigap policy. So you can have high deductibles, think thousands of dollars. There are caps, but it can be $8 or $9 grand. So it can be expensive. Now, of course, if you have a year where you only see your doctor for a physical and that's it, you probably love your Medicare Advantage plan. But if you start to really use the insurance because you get sick, some serious condition, and it could be chronic, it could be ongoing, you could end up spending thousands of dollars every year. So, and I'll talk about that in a little more detail on Wednesday. But so at the end of the day, it's not just about the premiums you're paying; it's about all of the costs that you're paying. The tough part is you might go a decade or more, not depending on how life goes, right? And you don't need much health care, and you could be paying a truckload of money to original Medicare by itself, maybe not a truckload, but you add a Medigap policy, and those get more expensive every year. And how that's a whole nother topic, how they're priced. But the prices go up, right, as you age. Even for those that base the fee, the premium only on your age when you enrolled, there's still just the increase of medical costs that do cause the premiums to go up. So anyway, yeah, this is one of the sources I'll mention in the second video on Wednesday. But there is through SHIP, and there's a website, shiphelp.org. Here it is, where you can find local help. There's actually a study done on how effective this help is, and I'll be honest, it got mixed results. But I would absolutely try it, depending on where you can find the office near you. It's interesting. So for SHIP, this right here, there's no financial incentive to steer you to one type of coverage or another, or one insurance company or plan. So that in that sense, it's unbiased, right? But there are other issues. I mean, it's volunteers; they get overworked. I know I have a study that I'll mention on Wednesday. So you could try them all, right? You could talk to them. You could call a broker. Just because you call a broker, whether it's Chapter or someone else, you don't have to buy from them. You could get their recommendation and say, "Thank you very much. I'll think about it." Right? Okay. I don't know when Medicare Advantage started. I just read that today, and I don't remember the date. I want to say late 1990s, 1997. It's introduced Part C. All right. Well, here's something. I may have read this, but it doesn't matter. Blaze says the problem with TRICARE is the providers won't submit directly. You have to file. That is a pain. All right. What is next? So it's funny to read all the comments, and I know it's taking me a while to get to a question. I'm sorry, but Medicare, I'm telling you, it's like we get fired up about it. It's an important issue, but Jonathan says, "What if you don't take drugs?" Well, I don't know. What if next year you do? Right? That's the question. Because if you don't have creditable, I think that's how you pronounce it, drug coverage, you get and you just don't have it for years, you'll get penalized such that when you do finally try to get coverage, it'll cost you a lot more. Again, to avoid people not having coverage until they need it, right? All right. I can only imagine what Friday is going to be like. I mean, your questions are great, but I've got hundreds of emails from folks with questions. All right. So Amarissa says, might want to double check the theory that you would be able to change from Advantage to Original and back and forth each year. Well, I'm not sure it'd be a good idea to change every year or why you would do that. But during the open enrollment period, I don't know if could you go from Original to Advantage and then the next year from Advantage back to Original. I don't know of a limit. You may not get Medigap coverage or it might be very expensive, but maybe there is some limit. And by the way, again, that also depends on states. There are some states where you can get Medigap coverage even without any underwriting. There's only about 4 of them, but there are a lot of state nuances to all of this as well. Okay. Norm says mutual funds in a taxable account. This is back to the mutual fund versus ETFs. Could cause taxes even though you're holding and not selling. Well, it could. I would say the Vanguard index mutual funds probably won't, but here's how you can check this out. We'll just look at this Fidelity fund as an example. We can go to performance. You could get this directly from Fidelity as well, but if you put it into Morningstar and then go to distributions, you will see the blue are the dark blue is a long-term capital gain distribution. The light blue is a short-term capital gain distribution. The green is income, which with this fund could be dividends or interest or both. And so, yeah, they've been distributing some capital gains now, so far not in 25. But this would definitely not be a fund, in my view, to hold in a taxable account. But if we went to we'll just use a Vanguard small cap index fund, which I happen to own. And we go to distributions. You see there's no capital gains distributions. Vanguard's pretty good about that. Others are catching up. There's green, of course, because in this case, there are dividends, right? I mean, I don't know what the dividend yield is. We could look it up. Over the last year, 1.3%. So you're going to have some income, but you're not going to have any capital gains distributions, or at least historically there haven't been, right? But in some funds, but generally speaking, it is true that ETFs can be more tax efficient. But again, if you're talking about the right kind of index funds, like we were just looking at with Vanguard, you should be okay. But again, you want to check it. Want to look at their history. Have they been distributing capital gains or not? All right, we have a Boldin question from Braxel. I know you suggest Boldin, but from my understanding, it does not follow your stocks and bonds. How does it know what to do? So it's a great question. And Prelana, you can put in your asset allocation. Projection Lab, you can put in your asset allocation. It's a fundamentally different approach. I do believe at some point Boldin might allow you to as well. To me, I'm a little leery of, it sounds great, right? Well, of course you put in your asset allocation. Otherwise, how's it going to know, how much stocks you have and bonds and then come up with some idea of future returns? But remember, in Boldin, and this is true with the other software as well, and I can pull it up on the screen real quick, but you set the expected return, right? And so maybe I can log in. Let's see. Yeah. So this is a demo account. And if we go to accounts and assets and then savings, we'll look at this 401k. So I've set the average rate of return. There's different ways to set it. You can pick some pre-configured assumptions, or you can hit custom and put in your own assumption. But, and I realize it's probably pretty small. Let me make it a little bigger. Anyway, I can decide what that should be based on how I invest in that account. So if I have whatever, 60% stocks and 40% bonds, I can put in an average rate of return based on that asset allocation. I don't need Boldin to know that I have 60% stocks and 40% bonds. And in fact, I like the control that I have because I can put in my own assumption. And there are different places you could go to look at past returns for asset allocation. One of them would be, Vanguard's got a page, Vanguard returns by asset allocation. If you Google that, let's see here if I can find the right page. They've changed. Yeah, here it is. So it's called Investment Portfolios Asset Allocation Models. You can Google that. I have no idea what surfing has to do with any of this, but that's okay. And we scroll down here and you can see from 26 to 24, 1926 to 2024, based on the different allocations, they increment it by 10%. You got the averages here. And they show you the greatest gains and greatest losses. So if we did 60-40, it's average 8.8. Now you don't have to use 8.8. You might say, well, I want to be a little more conservative. That's fine. But that gives you a rough idea. And so let's say you came in here and said, okay, well, I think 8.8 is a little too rich for me, but I'll put in 8 or whatever. Boldin, it doesn't need to know how you got to that or why, right? So, yeah. I'm just looking at this. Did I cover up the screen? Hopefully you saw most of it. Someone needs to learn how to operate this whole system. Okay. This is funny. David, I don't believe you won in 16 moves. I could have, maybe I exaggerated because it took a few longer moves than I thought it would. If I'm being totally honest. So, and my rating's been down. My rating's not great right now, my speed chess rating. But if we, let's see here, I can show you the game. Game history, it was the last one I played. Here it is. How many moves was it? It was 20. I did exaggerate. It's right here. Yeah, it took 20. It was a Sicilian. He played the Najdorf, and he made that move, which isn't great. And then here, things just kind of went downhill for him. Yeah. And then all of this happened. Checkmate. Yeah, so it was 20. So you're right. I did exaggerate. Sorry about that. All right. I could show you a game where I got totally demolished, but that wouldn't be any fun. All right. Oh, this is a good question. Go Cubs, 1876. Was that the last time they won the World? No, that can't be right. Okay, anyway. I've had home country bias, but want to change. For international funds, do you think they're best in taxable because of the foreign tax credit, a Roth retirement account, traditional retirement account, or elsewhere? Well, I think they're great in a taxable account. And there is the foreign tax credit. You could crunch the numbers, though, depending on your circumstances. It may not make that much of a difference. But they're reasonably tax efficient. Their yields are higher than a U.S. say total market fund. If we look at, we'll just look at VXUS as an example, which is a Vanguard Total International Stock ETF, and we can see that their yield is 274. So a total U.S. stock fund is like 1.2 or 1.3. So you're getting more dividends, and so in that sense, it's a little less efficient from a tax perspective. Although you are getting as you pointed out. Let me take the comment off. You're getting the foreign tax credit, so that's a credit you get because the fund has to pay some taxes to other countries where they're investing. So I have both. I have my foreign fund actually isn't a taxable account, but I do have some international stocks as part of my Vanguard target date retirement fund in our retirement account. So on that issue, I personally don't get too hung up on it. But you could crunch the numbers and do the math. I did that at one point for us and decided kind of, most of our international isn't a taxable account. So but it didn't have a huge impact on us. But it's a good thing to think about. So, but as between Roth and traditional, I think either are fine. I do want to make sure that our Roth is 100% stocks, but you may not have any traditional. You may need to put some fixed income in a Roth, and that's okay. We have the opposite problem. We don't have much in a Roth at all. So I wish we had more. Yes. So Dave was pointing out there are a couple of states where you can move from an Advantage plan to original Medicare and get a Medigap policy without a health exam or without having to certify that you're healthy. Underwriting, they call it. And they are, I want to say, Maine, Massachusetts, New York, and Connecticut. States that don't require Medigap underwriting. And the rules within each are a little different too. So, yeah, here it is. Connecticut, Maine, Massachusetts, and New York. So, but there's more to it than just that. So just keep that in mind. And by the way, you think, well, that'd be good because I could get on Medicare Advantage, and then if maybe I don't have much need for coverage right now. I'm healthy, and if I get sick, I can move over. Well, a couple things to keep in mind. You can move over during the open enrollment period. So if you get sick in January, well. Yeah, because in January, there's another enrollment period, but it's just for Medicare Advantage. You could be stuck on the Advantage plan for a year. Again, but there could be state exceptions that I'm not aware of. And at least for one of those 4 states, I think there's limits on which Medigap policy you can pick. So the point is, you really need to do your due diligence. Yeah. So Bob wants to know my top 3 AI tools for investing. So I don't make investment decisions with AI tools. I do a lot of research with the tools on a lot of different things, including Medicare, for example. But you've got to really think through, make sure you're getting accurate information. I think there's probably 2 tools that I use the most. One is just ChatGPT, and the other is Claude. And I find that their research, I really like their research modes. You do a question in research in Claude, it might come up with two or 300 sources. And you can skim them very easily. So I'll just give an example. Let's see here. So here we are. We'll use 4.1. I've clicked this research key and do a deep dive on when one can switch from a Medicare Advantage plan to original Medicare with a focus on getting a Medigap Plan G coverage. And yeah, that's kind of a mess. Let's just see what it does. It's going to ask questions typically. This may take a second, so we'll come back to it. But those are the two I use. I've used Notebook LM, which I don't love as much as a lot of other people do. I think it's okay. I've used Perplexity. Again, I don't actually love Perplexity. A lot of people, do though, so that's just me. It didn't ask me any questions. It's starting the research. So we'll see what it comes up with. But I've not really used it in a deep way to come up with investing changes that I might make. I do plan some content and some videos around using AI in different ways related to our finances. What I'm really excited about, maybe excited is too strong a statement, but I'm looking forward to apps that like Boldin and Projection Lab and budgeting apps that bring in AI into the app and allow you to ask questions based on the data, your data in the app. Retirement planning tools so far don't really do that. There are some budgeting apps that do. Monarch Money is one. In fact, I did a sort of a deep walkthrough of it that I think I'll publish tomorrow. Origin is another one that you can interact with an AI. I'll tell you a tool that I really like. This is not an investing tool, but I use Tana, T-A-N-A, a lot. And let me see if I can show it to you why Claude is doing its thing. It's found, here's Claude. It's found 282 sources so far. It's been added a minute and 37, 292. I'm telling you, it goes crazy. But it's great when I'm researching retirement issues. So let's see. So this is this is Tana. Oops. Oh, interesting. So this is Tana. This was my note for I guess a couple of days ago. The power of suggestion. This is just a paper I found interesting. The moat of low status was a concept I found interesting. So if I went in here and said I could do Medicare, since we're talking about Medicare, original Medicare versus Medicare Advantage, right? I can't type. There we go. And I can pull this up. There it is. And you can imagine I might have some notes about this, right? Or I can hit a space for AI and I can ask AI a question. What are the pros and cons of each? And it's going to start generating. Boom. How did that happen? Let's get rid of that. And so you're using AI within a tool, basically within a note-taking tool, which I think is really cool. And I've started to use this more and more, not as it turns out for Medicare questions. But you can incorporate this into your notes. I find it very, very useful. Back to the Medicare. It's still searching. 303 sources. We'll just let that run. It takes a while. Okay. Where are we? Is anyone still watching? What's happening? I don't even know anymore. I think Manningcast is on tonight, so we got that to look forward to. All right. So here's a great question. Do I need another program besides Boldin to track investments and allocation? Yes, you do. And that's true, by the way, if you use Projection Lab or Prelana or Maxify, or there's others, On Trajectory, Wealth Trace, or professional like Right Capital or whatever. Well, you could use eMoney that would definitely would show you your asset allocation. And although if you use the free version at Fidelity called Full View, I don't think that comes with a lot of retirement planning features, if I recall correctly. But in any event, you don't really need to connect the software. So, you can use to track your investments Empower. It's a great option. It's free. I've been using Kubera. It's not free. It was $250 a year. Now I think it's $360. It's expensive. But it has a lot of features that I like, and I'm going to do a review of Kubera at some point here. But they tell you your asset allocation. Kubera gives you a lot more flexibility in how the data is presented, and it can do some things. It can track some assets that Empower cannot, but it's expensive. And a lot, if you need those features, it's great. If you don't need them, then you're probably going to use something like Empower. Those aren't the only two options, but I would say Empower's, you can use Morningstar, Investor. I don't love it because there are limits on tracking performance. You can use Stock Rover. That would probably be more if you do a lot of research on individual stocks or actively managed funds and that sort of thing. But yeah, I kind of view the retirement planning as one tool, and then tracking your investments and asset allocation as a separate tool for the most part. Actually, the one that comes the closest is Empower. Empower has a decent retirement planner. It can't do what the other tools can do, but for a lot of folks, it probably does enough. So that one probably comes the closest to sort of combining everything. And it can be an expense tracker for you as well. It's not really a budgeting tool, think a forward-looking budget, but if you just want to know where you're spending your money, yeah, Empower will do that too. Okay. So there's some talk about, will there be prior authorizations required for original Medicare? There already are. Not that many, but I read that today. Maybe there's more coming in 26. I don't know, but they're very limited right now. Yeah, I commented on this, Dave. Some Advantage plans will give you what some refer to as a Part B give back. It may not be 100% of your Part B premium, but again, from what I've read, most Advantage plans don't do that, and those that do, you're giving it up somewhere. They're not doing that out of the goodness of their hearts. You're losing some kind of benefits. Yeah, maybe they're not worth it to you. Maybe that's a good way to go. That's a different issue. You just have to keep that in mind. Okay. So this is a really good comment. As a healthcare worker for over 20 years, I can confirm that the chief worry with Medicare Advantage plans is how restrictive, administratively intensive, and poor coverage these plans continue to exhibit. I got to tell you, if you're a healthcare provider, you probably hate them, right? Because you've got to jump through hoops that you don't have to jump through with original Medicare. And over the last 12 months, I don't go to a lot of doctors, but I've been to a physical therapist for my shoulder. I get a physical every year, and I ask them, so original Medicare or Medicare Advantage? Without question, they all prefer original Medicare. I've never had someone say, oh, Medicare Advantage is the way to go, or it's a toss-up. But again, it's easy for me to sit here and say that. Cost is an issue for folks. And there can be exceptions. If you want an HMO plan that you like a lot, you've had it, during your working years. So I want to be careful from making this, to completely generalizing and saying Advantage plans are no good and everyone should be on original Medicare. But yeah, what you're saying is, for what it's worth, is consistent with the healthcare providers that I've talked to, and I know some doctors. I ask them, it's like, hi, how you doing? So tell me, original Medicare, Medicare Advantage? It's always original Medicare. All right. They probably just think I'm weird, but I get that a lot. So here's another comment, a lot of Medicare. I guess I brought it up, didn't I? Providers are leaping out of network in the masses. I don't know if that might be true. I don't know, but it is absolutely true that you could sign up for a Medicare Advantage plan, and the doctor that you want to go to who's in network can choose at any time to leave the network. Now, if that happens, there are certain things that get triggered and you have some options, but it's absolutely a real thing for sure. Yeah. So David points out today's show is a good reason why you should talk to a good advisor personally. I completely agree. You won't have to do it every year. I mean, some would say you should during the open enrollment period every year at least check your prescription drug plan if you're on Part D, check your Advantage plan if you're on an Advantage plan, make sure your providers are still in network, that your drugs are covered, that you can't find a less expensive option. And that's I'm sure worth it. The Medigap policy, I don't see switching that like you might a Part D or Advantage plan, although I suppose there could be circumstances where you might. But having said that, I don't shop our health insurance every year. We're not on Medicare yet, but I could still shop. And I think for me, part of the reason is you're okay with what you have. Your doctors are covered. And if you're like me, it's like, I don't want to mess with it. It's like a house of cards. No one get near the table. Close the door. I don't want anything to go wrong here. That's probably maybe overkill. Maybe I could lighten up a little bit. So, but I do think generally it can't hurt to check. All right, let's take a look at this thing. What monstrous thing did it come up with? So it looked at all of these sources, and 72 are actually from the government, but you'll see what Claude does. It organizes the sources. It just doesn't give you some massive list. By the way, Medigap birthday rule, that's a whole nother thing. We haven't even talked about that. You can just Google it if you've never heard of it. It's a state law that allows you to change Medigap policies at times of the year near, as you might have guessed, your birthday. But there's all kinds of rules and restrictions, and you got to understand it. State-specific Medigap, the Washington, Missouri Medigap anniversary. I don't even know what that is. So this is why I like Claude, though. I like the user interface and what it does, and then it gives you a document. In this case, switching from Medicare Advantage to original Medicare with Medigap Plan G. And it gives you a lot of data. I'm not going to read through it, but there you go. And so, I use Claude a lot in ChatGPT, and then Tana for note-taking and the AI that's integrated. In that case, it's an open AI. I don't know which model it is, but it uses ChatGPT. All right. So Braxa wants to know if Medicare sends you a bill or do they take it out of your Social Security check? My understanding is if you're on Social Security, because you can start Medicare before you start claiming Social Security, right? But if you're on Social Security for Part B premiums, they take it out of your Social Security check. That's my understanding. And remember, for both Part B and Part D, there's potentially IRMAA, right? One thing that confused me, assuming you're on original Medicare, the Part B is administered by the government, but Part D is not, right? Part D you buy through an insurance company. So I started thinking, well, wait a minute. If someone's on IRMAA and they have to pay a higher Part D, as in drugs, premium, that shouldn't go to the insurance company. Why should they get more money just because someone makes more? Yeah, they don't. It goes to the government. Okay. So this is the kind of thing I sit in a desk right over there during the day. I think about these issues. And I research. I don't know. Maybe I need to get a life. I did work out today. I did pull-ups with a heavy chain around my shoulders. I don't know. Yeah, I need to get a life. All right. Let's see. Oh, someone started off. I disagree with you. I haven't even read the whole comment, but it's from Dave, and he's a smart guy. Let's see. I disagree with your answer to my question. I didn't even realize I answered a question from Dave. I forgot. Advantage plans are about $800 a month from U.S. government, and they therefore have a huge advantage to deny claims and delay treatment and prior authorizations. Well, I'm not sure what my comment was that you disagree with, but the data says that about 6%. Maybe that's the comment I made. That's just from the data. It was from a Kaiser report, and Kaiser is getting by the way, Kaiser Family Foundation, KFF, that is an excellent resource. Don't really think about it as, oh, that's an HMO. And so it's a totally different, it's Kaiser, but it's a really good resource. But in any event, I don't know if that was the point that you were responding to, Dave, but it was 6 point something that were denied. And of course you can appeal that, right? But maybe it was a different comment I made. I don't know. And by the way, the other thing to keep in mind is, they can't just deny all the claims and then keep a ton of profit, right? Because there's rules about how much of have to go for healthcare for those enrolled. By the way, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that insurance companies always do the right thing. For goodness sake, we know that ain't true. And they are motivated by profit, as most companies are. I'm just saying what I read was those claims that are denied through the prior authorization process. Again, it was around 6%. Now, that's just one data point. It could be, though, really important care that you need, right? They're probably not denying your run-of-the-mill, typical, I need an x-ray because I hurt my ankle. I suppose they could, but it's often really serious, expensive care that you need in potentially life-threatening situations. So I'm not meaning to minimize the significance of that 6%, number one. Number two, I'll personally get original Medicare. And the whole prior authorization issue is one of the reasons why. So, but I also, at the same time, I've seen videos on YouTube where they record a call from a healthcare provider and an insurance company, and it's just a disaster. I think it's wrong to watch that and say, oh, that must be what it's like all the time. I don't think that's fair either. I think I just don't like trying to get people to make decisions out of fear. Just get the facts, figure it out. I don't know. As best you can. All right, how are we doing on time? 8:19, wow. Is there a poll? There was. I could do another one. Let's see here. What should I ask now? I have a different kind of question. Have you invested in the following this year? And gold. I just want to start with gold. So the problem with the poll is you can only pick one. Let me do this. I'm curious. Have you invested? Have you bought gold in the past 12 months? And we'll just keep it as yes, no. The reason I ask is that, gold is up this year. It's significantly. And the one aspect of gold that I like is that it's sort of outside the system, at least for the most part. But I still don't own any gold. And when I think about a change to my asset allocation, one of the things I just don't do is go into an asset class that's just going crazy. Because, and I remember thinking about this in the context of commodities maybe 15 years ago or something like that. Because I'm too concerned, I know myself too well. Am I coming up with some intellectual reason that I need this asset class? But the real reason is because it's up 25 or 40 or 50% in the last year. And I'm just kind of curious about that. From what I can tell, the vast majority of you have not bought gold. Only 8%. We'll see what happens. All right. I pay $700 a month for healthcare premiums for my wife and self next year. For my wife and myself next year, applying for Medicare. How do I decide if keeping both plans is worth it? I assume you're paying it through an employer as opposed to just on the open marketplace, in which case I don't know why I don't know why you would keep it. But through an employer, again, as I mentioned earlier in the show, there's sort of a series of questions you need to think through depending on the size of your company, whether you're paying into an HSA and other factors. And the link to this book walks through it. And there's a link below the video. By the way, this is just one resource. I would research that issue extensively beyond this book. This is just one person's opinion. And maybe I misunderstand your question. Maybe you're asking something slightly a different thing, but how to avoid IRMAA? Well, I mean, the only way to avoid IRMAA is to reduce your modified adjusted gross income. So how you do that, I guess, depends, or even if you can. I mean, you don't want to say, well, I'll just make a lot less money. I don't think, just because you're going to pay IRMAA, right? But you could potentially make changes to how your assets are set up. It just depends where your income's coming from. It typically goes back 2 tax years, looks at what's called your modified adjusted gross income. So your adjusted gross income is a number on your tax return. Modified adjusted gross income is not. But I think basically for Medicare, you're adding back in any interest that wasn't taxed. There may be something else. We can look it up. Let's see here. Yeah, so you find your adjusted gross income, you add back in any tax-exempt interest income. That may be about it. So, and then if you hit a certain level, even by $1, we can look at the brackets. Hang on. Which are actually in the book too. But let's see here. So here's a table. This is 2023. But you'll get the idea. This might be up to date. Oh yeah, this is up to date for coverage years 2025. If MAGI in 2023, because remember they look back 2 years. Here are the numbers, and here's the additional charges for drug plan under Part D. And so I can make this a little bigger. You'd have to reduce your modified adjusted gross income. Of course, it's forward looking, so you can't go back to 23 and reduce your modified adjusted gross income, right? Now, if you've had a change in circumstances, you can apply for relief from IRMAA. So that's something to think about. And And I'll show you that. Let's see if they call them life-changing events. And let me see if I can find this for you. This is the form you use. I assume it lists the life-changing events. Let me just see the instructions. Yeah. Marriage, divorce, death, work stoppage, work reduction, loss of income producing property, loss of pension, and employer settlement payment. I don't have any experience with attempting to do this, of course. I'm not of that age, but that's something else to think about. You can't have a life-changing event that allows you to possibly get relief from the increased premiums that you pay. With the income-related monthly adjustment amount. Wow. Okay. This is funny from Lisa. Hello, group. Major financial decision here. Should I buy a one-day $4.99 pass from Sling TV so I can watch the NFL game? Of course you should. Although I refused to subscribe to Peacock to watch the Ohio State Buckeyes play. Now, in fairness, I was on an airplane flying from Portland, Oregon when they were playing. So there's that. All right. So this is a good question from Josh. Do you use Boldin's numbers to do Roth conversions? I've noticed that transfer numbers are not the same as you've entered. I'm not sure what that means, but small print says to use tax software. Well, so Boldin doesn't factor in every single conceivable tax that could impact the Roth conversion decision. At least the one that comes to mind is the 3.8%, which, on net interest income, which could come into play if you might say, well, what's that got to do with moving a traditional retirement money to Roth? Well, if you're going to pay the taxes out of a taxable account, and to do that, you have to sell some appreciated stock, for example, that could trigger that 3.8%. So I think their numbers are very good. And by the way, Projection Lab does something similar. Prelana, more complicated to use, but allows you to analyze some things that you can't analyze with the other two. But in any event, I think it gives you a good sort of order of magnitude if you're trying to hit a certain tax bracket. But yes, if you're going to actually pull the trigger, you need to think through, okay, this year, what exactly are the consequences of this increased income? If you're going to, whatever the amount is, you're going to convert. And for that, tax software is probably the best. Or if you have someone prepare your taxes, let them do the analysis for you. And I would do that because I just want to make crystal clear. I want to be positive that I understand the consequences of doing this, which is one of the reasons in our case, if we do a Roth conversion this year, and I still am a bit undecided, I'll wait till December so that I know what my tax situation is this year. Now, I own a business. If I were sort of just an employee and I knew, okay, I already know what's going to happen. I know what my year looks like. Maybe I'd do it a little bit earlier, but I'll probably wait till December to make the final decision for that reason. All right. 8:29, time for one more question. How's the poll? Are we still at 8%? 11% bought gold. Okay. Yeah, I haven't bought gold. I still don't plan to right now. Yeah, you never know. Let's see. Let's go down to the end. We're close. Let's see what we've got. And then maybe a non-financial question. Well, by the way, one of the issues that you hear a lot about is Advantage plans using the fact that it includes dental or vision or whatnot, or a free, some sort of gym membership. And the thing is that you really don't want to make your decision based on those things because the value of those things is not great. We don't, like my wife and I don't have vision or dental. You just pay out of pocket. The insurance isn't all that great. It's not worth much. If you're going to get an Advantage plan, it might make sense to see what they offer and pick one. That might be part of your decision-making, that benefit. But again, it's like having the tail wag the dog. You definitely don't want to buy an Advantage plan, in my opinion, simply because they're going to throw in vision and dental. That to me just doesn't make good sense. All right. It's 8:30 already. I don't know. Talking about Medicare, just time flies by. I'll just mention this one from MJ. I'm deliberately doing Roth conversions to IRMAA brackets this year to avoid the risk of higher rates in the future. And that makes sense. I think you can calculate that, of course, on your own. You make a guess as to what the brackets will be. But Prelana, if you want to try it, it's got more complicated software to use, in my opinion. But it can do the analysis based on IRMAA brackets for what it's worth. All right, here we go from Dave. Yoga, much lately? Not as much. I've been traveling. But I will be doing yoga tomorrow. I do hot yoga, Bikram. I'm not very flexible at all. So my goal is, one, not to pass out, and two, not to hurt myself. The funny thing is, after a while, I've been doing it for three years. When I first started, the hot room was like, oh, I can't wait to get out of here. I'm just trying to survive. Now I love it. It's rare that I feel uncomfortable. It's usually about 105 degrees, 40% humidity. It's rare that I'm like, ugh. And I even get there early. I get there 10 or 15 minutes early. So I love it. But yeah, I'm not very flexible. But not a lot lately. No. So sad. But I'm back here. Life has been very busy for me, honestly, for the last few years, for a lot of reasons, a lot of them good reasons that I just don't, they're not relevant to the show, so I don't talk about them. But we got some projects done. Not 100%, but big pieces of projects done. And really ending this past weekend, like, a day ago. So I am feeling, maybe that's why I'm so fired up tonight. I don't know. I'm looking forward to that. All right, enough chit chat. So there'll be a couple of Medicare videos on Wednesday. I highly recommend that you watch both of those before you get any help, unless you already know unless you already know what you need to know about Medicare, regardless of who you reach out for help. And then we'll have the live interview on Friday. And if you can't make it, it'll be available on YouTube. It's at 1 p.m. Eastern time. And but most of that's going to be answering your Medicare questions. But I have a list of questions about Chapter that I'm going to ask him at the end of the interview as well. And so we'll see how that goes. I am going to have some Medicare content throughout the open enrollment period because I think it's important. And when I see what's out there now, I think some of it's really good. Some of it's terrible. And I just think, particularly during open enrollment, I just think it's important that people understand the choices that they have. So that's what I'm going to do. All right. Enough chit chat. I guess that's it for tonight. Hope you have a great week. You can go watch Monday Night Football, Manningcast, whatever. And I will see you, videos on Wednesday and a live interview on Friday. Have a great week. Until next time, remember, the best thing money can buy is